guys, I hope you're doing good. I'm sorry I'm not there, but I want to give you some information that'll help you when you're watching your video today. So you should have your lecture in front of you. It's double-sided. On the front, there's a little picture of a lion sucking his thumb, so you should be in the right spot. So what this is a background to the English Civil War. You're going to start watching a video about it today, but we just want to give you some background so when you're watching it, it makes a little more sense. So on your lecture map, just fill in the words as you follow along this lecture. All right, so you have some medieval reforms. We're going all the way back in time. We're going back to about the 10th century. So there's this guy, Henry II. So that's who you should fill into your line. Henry II, he ruled from 1154 to 1189. And his greatest contribution was the development of what's called common law. And what common law is, it goes all the way back to Roman law. And what it does is it expresses the will of a ruler. And what's important about that is that common law expressed the will of, or what Henry II did is he took this common law to express the will of the whole kingdom by developing court decisions. So he starts with the rule of just himself, and then he's going to start bringing in ideas from the whole kingdom. This seems like something we kind of take for granted today, but it was a new idea by the 10th century. So Henry II, he was a good king, everyone loved him, and that idea of common law was in place in England, but he had a son named John. You might have seen this guy before if you saw, Robin Hood, the Disney movie, that's him. Henry II's son John came to power, and he was really unpopular. He fought really expensive and unsuccessful wars with France, so not only did they spend a lot of money, but he also lost them, so that doesn't make people happy. And he raised taxes, meaning a lot of people had to pay more money in order to fight this war with France. So pay a lot of money, and they don't win. So by 1215, nobles rebelled, and they forced John to sign what's called the Magna Carta. And what this does is it limits John's power. We're going to have more information on this to come, but Magna Carta means the Great Charter. And what it does is it's going to make it so that the king doesn't have as much power, and he's going to give over that power to his people, which is some of the information or some of the ideas that we see in the Enlightenment. So, the Magna Carta. Magna Carta, it means the Great Charter, and that's a picture of it. You can still go see it. It's really small. It's hard to read. But you can still go see it. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to limit the power of the monarch. So it shows respect for individual rights and liberties while limiting the power of the monarch. And what it includes is some basic legal rights. So it's going to give more rights to the people. And it's going to lay them out expressly. And taxes, this is a big key thing. You should highlight this, star this, happy faces next to it, is that the taxes had to be approved by the people. And in England's case, that's by the Parliament. So the king could never institute a new tax if they were going to war or if they're building new castles, whatever it may be. Could not pass any taxes. The king couldn't on his own. He had to get approval by the people. That's a big change and a movement away from kind of the absolute power. And it also includes due process of law, which means kind of a right to a jury trial, and other legal rights that made it so to check the king's power, essentially. So he couldn't do whatever he wanted, and there were specific laws that both the king and the people had to follow. So Magna Carta, Great Charter, it still has influence today in our own constitution. And we see these ideas in our Enlightenment thinkers. All right, so we're going to skip ahead a couple years and look at, we're going to skip this, guys. We're going to go ahead to the Model Parliament. So in 1295, King John, the one that's really unpopular, right? The one that had signed the Magna Carta, had a grandson who was ruling named Edward I, and he needed money for a war. Now we know that the Parliament is the ones that have to pass the tax. So he's going to call together the lords, the knights, and burgesses. Burgesses are town leaders. He calls them together to vote on taxes and to make other reforms and make other laws. So he's going to call them together because he cannot pass the law or pass the tax on his own. He has to call them together. And what we have is our two houses of Parliament, is what's established at this point. We have the House of Commons, which are made up of the knights and the burgesses, kind of town leaders. Think of them as your mayors. And you have the House of Lords, which were made up of nobles, kind of the aristocracy, and bishops. So you have these two houses that will come together, vote on taxes, make reforms. And what this does is the way he organized this parliament kind of sets the standard for a parliament. It hadn't ever been organized quite this way, and then this is going to become the routine going forward. So it sets the standard for Parliament. This limited the power of the monarch and establishes the practice of representation. So, at the top here, where you see this guy, so that's Edward I, and this, if anyone knows what it is, Westminster, is where they'll eventually start meeting the House of Commons and House of Lords, where they limit the power of the monarch and establish the practice of representation in what's called the Model Parliament. All right. So, one more slide. All right. Now we're going to skip that. Skip this. You guys can do that later. All right. So, this is not in your lecture map. I just want to go through who these people are because you've probably heard of them before, and I don't want to totally skip over them, but you don't need to write these guys down. But you might have heard of the House of Tudor and Stuart. So we have Henry the Seventh, who's the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of Edward I. And his son is Henry the Eighth, and he gets married 6 times. And he has 6 different wives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first one he disowns. The next one he chops off her head. And goes through a couple more. All right, so he has a son, Edward the Sixth, who died young. So his daughter Elizabeth I came to power, but she died having no children. So who came to power next was James the First. He was actually called James the Sixth of Scotland. And then he's going to be named, because Elizabeth died with no kids, he's going to be named King of England. So he's James the Sixth of Scotland, but James the First of England. And he is the first of the Tudors. Oh, sorry, guys. We're going to skip ahead. Sorry about that. All right, there's all the wives again. Good to see them around too. All right, they're gone again. All right. So, Elizabeth is the last of the Tudors. She has no children. You have James I, and he is from the House of Stuart. That's where we get the Stuart line. And that's who we're going to focus on during the English Civil War. Charles I is his son, and he's going to die when he's beheaded. That's a spoiler alert. We're going to see that happen. So James I and Charles I are the people we're really going to focus on in our video. All right, so back to your lecture notes. Charles I of England. So, remember, he was the son of James I, and they're from the Stuart family. And they were strong believers in divine right, just like Louis was in our press conference. But there's some issues during Charles I's reign. First is that there's some religious conflict going on. Puritans are going to try to reform the Church of England. The Church of England at this point is Protestant, but there's these Puritans who think that it's not quite reformed enough. You also have what are called the Star Chambers, where Charles I is going to use his royal court Instead of following parliamentary courts, essentially he's abusing his power and ignoring common law. And they're going to have some money issues, some economic issues. And Parliament's going to refuse to give Charles I the money he wants. And at that point, he's going to ignore Parliament and reintroduce other taxes, which doesn't normally make people happy. So, by this point, you have all your notes, and you will start watching our first video of the year. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you guys later.